Well, you certainly really challenge conventional thinking in terms of the roles that a father, a husband, play in a relationship. But I do believe it's so worthy of exploration and discussion because we do see so many women who are hurting today because they're under attack. They're in relationships where that subservience has led to domestic abuse, as we talked about in the first segment of today's show, and left them feeling with a lack of self-esteem. And often they feel that they are to blame. And so I think probably the biggest thing that has passed down through the generations has been this blame mentality, that the woman is to blame, and in many cases it's internalized.
Yes.
That they're the blame, even when they're not.
Yes, exactly, because if someone has presented the idea that listening to a woman has created death, then yes, you will be inclined to internalize any type of blame. So anything he does to you that's bad, now you're sitting here thinking that, well, he might have did this and it was wrong, but if I hadn't have been doing A, B, and C, this wouldn't have happened to me, and that's just not the truth. And that's how Satan operates. Satan operates through the lie. And the lie is that your role is to be subservient. That's a lie. That's one of the first lies that Satan managed to get wedged between Adam and Eve and their God's creation, and that's not how they were created.
And so your book, The Sullied Bride, takes us through that scenario, and let's go through it a little bit so that our listeners will know exactly what to expect. You talked about, as we talked about, how did this happen in the first place? Stonewalling, the first sin, respect, a woman's place, indecisive, insubordinate soldiers, the covenant of rape, and a new thing. Let's talk about some of those chapters in your book and exactly what messages you hope women receive from these chapters today.
Right. So how did this happen? That's just a general question. I ask myself that. How did this happen? How did you get to the point where women are half the population, but yet we're disenfranchised to the point where we don't own as much as men, we're not treated fairly as men, we don't inherit the way men are supposed to inherit, even in like cultures where people do inherit. How did that happen? And it happened from the fact that right here at the beginning, the first man and the first woman, the man looked at her and decided that she was fit for domestic service and that she was not entitled to half the garden and that she would receive less than or nothing, and her only role was to serve him. That's how it began. Yes, because God saw that it was not good for man to be alone and that he needed some help. And now we know that help is deeper than just subservience. She contends and everything, which means that the man himself was in lack. So he needed help. But in order to make sure that he would never be without her help, because he was the one who needed help, he made her subservient and dominated over her and ruled over her. So now his need is fulfilled, but hers is not.
And then stonewalling, I know we've talked about it before, but in case someone just tuned in, because it's an important component here to understand exactly how this sets up the scenario for that subserviency.
Right, and then stonewalling is just like you let somebody fall into danger, because all you have to do is let the circumstances cave in. So I'm just not going to say anything, I'm just going to let this happen, and then once you fail, I'll be right there to blame you and shame you and then rule over you.
It's much like if the roof is leaking, and we all see that the roof is leaking, and no one does anything about it until the roof caves in. Exactly. Everyone is culpable for that. Not one person in a relationship, but everyone.